Modern preservation techniques have allowed researchers to extract maximum information from the Mesha Stele inscription through advanced analytical methods. High-resolution photography has captured details of the ancient text that were invisible to earlier scholars who examined the monument. Digital enhancement techniques have clarified partially damaged sections of the inscription, ensuring accurate translation of the complete royal message. Three-dimensional scanning has created precise measurements and documentation that preserve the monument's information for future research and analysis. The discovery of additional Moabite inscriptions and artifacts has created a broader archaeological context that validates the historical framework preserved in the Mesha Stele. Excavations throughout Jordan have uncovered pottery, architectural remains, and other material evidence that confirms the cultural and political conditions described in the royal inscription. These archaeological discoveries demonstrate that the Mesha Stele represents genuine historical documentation rather than later propaganda or fictional royal claims. The material evidence validates the inscription's descriptions of Moabite society and political organization. Comparative analysis with other ancient Near Eastern royal inscriptions demonstrates that the Mesha Stele follows standard conventions for commemorative royal monuments from this historical period. The inscription structure, vocabulary, and content match patterns found in Assyrian, Babylonian, and other royal texts that documented military campaigns and territorial conquests. The stele's adherence to contemporary royal inscription conventions confirms its authenticity and historical reliability. The monument represents typical royal documentation practices rather than unique or suspicious literary creation. The political relationships described in the Mesha Stele validate biblical understanding of international diplomacy and territorial control during the divided monarchy period. The inscription documents the complex relationships between Israel, Judah, and neighboring kingdoms that require detailed knowledge of regional politics and diplomatic procedures. The stele confirms that biblical writers understood the administrative structures and political hierarchies that governed ancient international relations. The monument provides contemporary evidence that validates biblical descriptions of political alliances, territorial disputes, and diplomatic negotiations. The Mesha Stele represents contemporary royal documentation that validates biblical historical claims through independent verification created for political rather than religious purposes. The inscription preserves factual information about military campaigns, territorial boundaries, and political relationships that biblical texts reference throughout their historical narratives. The monument demonstrates that biblical authors possessed accurate knowledge of contemporary political conditions rather than creating fictional or idealized accounts of ancient international relations. As researchers continue developing increasingly sophisticated methods for analyzing such ancient documents, they gain new tools for examining the precise timing and sequence of the historical events dating these monuments commemorate biblical timelines. While royal inscriptions provide contemporary validation of biblical events, modern scientific techniques offer an entirely different approach to confirming scriptural chronology through objective measurement rather than textual interpretation. Revolutionary radiocarbon dating methods have developed precision capabilities that researchers couldn't have imagined just a decade ago. Scientists can now measure carbon-14 decay with unprecedented accuracy, creating timelines precise to within decades rather than centuries. These advanced techniques use accelerator mass spectrometry combined with sophisticated statistical modeling to extract maximum chronological information from tiny sample sizes. The most significant breakthrough involves overcoming the Hallstatt plateau, a cosmic phenomenon that previously complicated Iron Age dating by creating atmospheric carbon, 14 fluctuations between 800 and 400 BC. This natural occurrence caused dating uncertainties that could span several centuries, allowing skeptics to argue that archaeological evidence couldn't definitively support biblical timelines. However, recent technological advances have conquered these limitations through sophisticated calibration methods and statistical analysis techniques that extract reliable dates even from problematic time periods. The validation of biblical chronology through scientific dating has emerged most clearly at Tel Gezer, where enhanced radiocarbon methods have resolved long-standing scholarly debates about when major construction projects occurred. Archaeologists working at this biblical site have used high-precision dating techniques to analyze the monumental structures, including the famous six-chambered gate that biblical texts associate with Solomon's building activities. The radiocarbon results place construction of these massive fortifications firmly in the first half of the 10th century BC, directly supporting biblical claims that Solomon rebuilt Gezer as part of his kingdom expansion. This scientific validation contradicts scholarly theories that downdated these structures to the 9th century BC based on architectural comparisons rather than empirical evidence. The radiocarbon dates provide definitive proof that supports the biblical timeline over academic speculation that lacked scientific foundation. The Gezer Gate represents one of the most significant examples where objective scientific measurement has confirmed biblical historical claims against scholarly skepticism. The dating methodology employed at Gezer involved analyzing organic materials found in the construction layers associated with the gate complex. Researchers extracted carbon samples from charcoal fragments, carbonized seeds, and other organic residues discovered within the foundation contexts of the monumental architecture. These materials underwent accelerator mass spectrometry analysis at specialized laboratories equipped to handle ancient samples with extreme precision. The resulting radiocarbon measurements were then processed through advanced statistical algorithms that account for atmospheric variations and calibration uncertainties. The convergence of multiple radiocarbon dates from different areas of the Gezer Gate complex created a robust chronological framework that eliminates dating ambiguity. Each sample produced measurements that clustered around the same time period, creating statistical confidence that the construction occurred during the first half of the 10th century BC. The consistency of these independent measurements demonstrates that the dating results reflect genuine historical timing rather than laboratory error or contamination issues. The archaeological context surrounding these radiocarbon samples strengthens the connection between the scientific dates and the biblical historical framework. The organic materials were found in sealed construction contexts that could only have been deposited during the original building activities. The stratigraphic relationships between different construction phases provide additional confirmation that the dated materials represent the actual timing of the gate's construction rather than later repairs or modifications. The implications of the Gezer dating extend beyond this single site to validate the broader chronological framework that biblical texts assume for Solomon's reign and building activities. The scientific confirmation that major construction projects occurred during the 10th century BC supports biblical claims about the political and economic capabilities of Solomon's kingdom. The radiocarbon evidence demonstrates that Israel possessed the organizational resources and technical expertise necessary to undertake ambitious building projects during the period when biblical texts describe the height of the united monarchy. The precision achieved through modern radiocarbon dating techniques represents a fundamental advancement in archaeological methodology that provides objective verification for historical claims. Unlike interpretive approaches that rely on subjective analysis of architectural styles or ceramic typologies, radiocarbon dating produces quantitative measurements that can be verified and replicated by independent laboratories. The scientific nature of these dating methods creates empirical evidence that operates independently of religious or cultural bias. The technological sophistication enabling these chronological breakthroughs involves laboratory procedures that extract maximum information from minimal sample materials. Accelerator mass spectrometry allows researchers to date samples containing only milligrams of organic carbon, preserving precious artifacts while obtaining precise chronological data. Advanced statistical modeling techniques process radiocarbon measurements through complex algorithms that produce probability distributions indicating the most likely date ranges with confidence intervals that approach historical certainty. The success of radiocarbon dating at Gezer demonstrates how scientific methods can resolve archaeological debates that previously relied on subjective interpretation and scholarly opinion. The objective nature of scientific measurement provides a foundation for evaluating historical claims that transcends academic disagreements and personal biases. The empirical evidence creates common ground where data validates historical assertions rather than theoretical speculation. The application of these advanced dating methods has created a paradigm shift in biblical archaeology, where scientific evidence increasingly supports traditional chronological frameworks rather than challenging them. The radiocarbon confirmation of 10th century BC construction at Gezer represents just one example of how modern scientific techniques are validating biblical historical claims through objective measurement. The convergence of scientific dating with biblical chronology demonstrates that ancient historical accounts possess empirical foundation that can be verified through independent scientific analysis. The success at Gezer suggests that similar scientific validation awaits discovery at other biblical sites where advanced dating techniques have yet to be systematically applied. As these methods become more widely available and cost-effective, researchers expect to generate additional scientific evidence that will further illuminate the relationship between biblical accounts and archaeological reality. The objective nature of scientific dating provides tools for examining historical claims that promise to reshape understanding of biblical chronology and historical accuracy. These methodological advances have transformed how researchers evaluate biblical claims through empirical evidence rather than theoretical speculation. The convergence of multiple independent discoveries demonstrates remarkable consistency between archaeological findings and scriptural accounts. The Tel Gezer stele provides contemporary confirmation that King David existed as a historical ruler whose dynasty was recognized throughout the ancient Near East. The Ophel electrum pendant validates biblical descriptions of Phoenician craftsmen working in Solomon's Jerusalem during the exact period when Scripture describes these international collaborations. Radiocarbon dating of the Gezer Gate confirms 10th century construction that supports biblical chronology for Solomon's building projects. These three discoveries represent the strongest archaeological validation of biblical historical accuracy yet discovered. Each operates independently through different methodological approaches, yet consistently supports scriptural claims rather than contradicting them. Future excavations promise additional revelations as new technologies and systematic exploration continue illuminating the ancient world.